Run. Thabo's feet slam against the pavement. His chest burns. His heart pounds so hard it might explode. Behind him, sirens scream through Hillbrow. Blue lights flash across the buildings. The police are close. Too close. Stop! Police! He doesn't stop. He can't stop. He's 17 years old and his life is in a backpack. 2 stolen laptops that will send him to jail if they catch him. It was supposed to be easy. 5 minutes, Jabu said. The old man never fights back. In and out. But someone called the cops. Now Jabu is running one way and Thabo is running another, and everything is falling apart. He cuts into an alley, jumps over garbage. His lungs scream for air. A fence, 7 feet tall with barbed wire on top. Thabo climbs. The wire rips his jacket, cuts his back. He doesn't care. Pain is nothing compared to getting caught. He jumps down. His ankle twists. White-hot pain shoots up his leg, but he keeps running. Another corner, another street. The sirens are everywhere now. Then the tackle comes from nowhere. 1 second he's running. The next, a cop slams into him like a truck. His face hits the ground. He tastes blood. His nose cracks. Hands yank his arms back. Metal handcuffs click shut on his wrists. Gotcha, you little shit. More cops arrive. Boots everywhere. Voices shouting. They pull him to his feet. Blood drips from his nose. His whole body hurts. In the police van, squeezed between other prisoners, Thabo stares at his reflection in the dark window. Blood on his face, eyes that look dead already. How did I get here? The question burns in his mind. Not just here in this van, but how did a boy who wanted to be an engineer end up robbing stores? How did he become the thing he swore he'd never be? The van moves through Johannesburg, taking him to the police station, to a cell, to the end of everything. And as it drives, Thabo's mind goes back. Back to the beginning. Back to when he was 10 years old, lying in bed, listening to his father's footsteps in the dark. Back to the yellow house in Orlando East, where everything started to break. This is his story. The story of how his father ruined his childhood. The story of 7 years that led to 5 minutes in Hillbrow. It starts like this, with footsteps. Thabo learned to count his father's footsteps before he learned to count numbers in school. 1, 2, 3, steady and even, meant Baba was sober. Those nights were safe. Mama would hum in the kitchen, Naledi would laugh. For a few hours they were a normal family. But when the footsteps came uneven, stumbling, heavy, that's when 10-year-old Thabo would grab his 6-year-old sister's hand and pull her to their bedroom. Quietly, he'd whisper. She already knew. Even at 6, she understood. Their house sat at the edge of Orlando East, 4 rooms with thin walls. Through those walls, Thabo heard everything, the clink of bottles, his mother's nervous voice, his father's angry muttering. Tonight, the footsteps were wrong. They stumbled and stopped, stumbled and stopped. Naledi climbed into bed beside him. Her small body shook even though it was hot. "Is Baba angry?" she whispered. "No, he's just tired. Go to sleep." A lie. But what else could he say? Thabo stayed awake, listening. His heart beat with those terrible footsteps that meant another long night had begun. This wasn't always their life. There was a before, a time when his father smiled, when the house felt like a home, when Thabo had dreams instead of nightmares. But that was before the mine closed, before the drinking started, before everything broke. Baba wasn't always like this. Thabo remembered Sundays when his father would lift him onto his shoulders and walk through the township. Everyone knew Mandla Dlami. Everyone respected him. "Aye, Mandla," the men would call. His father wore his mine uniform with pride. That yellow hard head caught the sunlight like gold. "You see this, my boy? I work in the darkness so you can stay in the light. One day you'll go to university. You'll become an engineer, a doctor. You'll wear a suit and never see the inside of a mine." Those words planted dreams in Thabo's chest. He studied hard, practiced English, got top marks in maths. His teacher, Mrs. Khumalo, would tell Mama, "This one is special. This one is going places." Then came the day that changed everything. Noon. Baba never came home at noon, but there he stood in the doorway, yellow hard hat in his shaking hands. "Retrenched," he said. The English words sounded heavy. 20 years I gave them. They say the mine is cutting costs. 3 months' pay and a handshake. That's all." Mama's face collapsed. "We'll be fine. You'll find something else." But even 8-year-old Thabo heard the lie in her voice. The bottle came that weekend. Just beer at first, just to take the edge off. But the beer became whiskey. Weekend drinking became every day. And Baba, the man who promised Thabo a bright future, disappeared into bottles and never came back. What came out instead was angry, mean, violent. 20 years pulling gold from the earth, and in the end, the only thing that broke was their family. Mama wore long sleeves in summer. November in Johannesburg was hot. Everyone wore short sleeves or tank tops. Everyone except Mama. She moved differently now too, carefully, like she might break. Thabo was supposed to be asleep when he saw them. He'd gone to the kitchen for water and found her at the sink, sleeve rolled up, pressing a cold cloth to her wrist. Purple-black bruises circled it like a bracelet, finger-shaped marks. Their eyes met in the window's reflection. "I'm clumsy, baby," she said quickly, pulling the sleeve down. "I bumped the door." 10 years old, and Thabo already knew. Doors don't leave finger-shaped marks. He wanted to be brave, wanted to stand between his mother and father like heroes in movies, shout stop and make it all better. But he was small. His father was big, and fear was bigger than courage. So Thabo became strategic instead. When Baba's voice started to rise, Thabo would ask about soccer, chiefs or pirates, his father's favorite argument. When danger filled the air, Thabo would spill something, create a distraction, pull the anger toward himself. He learned to make himself and Naledi disappear when disappearing was the only defense. At school, Mrs. Khumalo asked why he looked tired. "Just not sleeping well, ma'am." True, but not the whole truth. The whole truth was he lay awake every night listening for breaking glass, for raised voices, for his mother's crying through walls too thin to keep secrets. The whole truth was he was 10 years old and already exhausted from a war he couldn't win. The shebeen was painted blue. It sat in Mam Khize's backyard 3 streets from Thabo's house. Thabo hated that blue building, hated it like you'd hate a person who stole from you. Every evening, Baba would take whatever money Mama earned from cleaning rich people's houses, and he'd walk 1 street, 2 streets, 3. Thabo would watch from the window and start counting, not footsteps this time, hours. 3 hours meant drunk but manageable. Baba would stumble home and pass out on the couch. 5 hours meant dangerous. Anything could trigger his rage. A cup left out, a wrong word, eye contact held too long. 7 hours meant Mama would wear long sleeves tomorrow. Sometimes Thabo walked past the shebeen after school. He'd stand behind the fence and watch. His father would be there with other men who'd lost their jobs. They'd drink and laugh too loud and argue about soccer. They looked like ghosts. Mam Khize would serve them drinks in plastic cups, collecting their money with a neutral face. She wasn't saving souls, she was running a business. Once, Thabo's friend Sipho asked, "Why doesn't your father just stop drinking?" How do you explain drowning to someone who's never been underwater? How do you say that his father was suffocating and the alcohol was both the water filling his lungs and the air he gasped for? You don't. You just change the subject and build walls so no one can see in. 3 streets away, the blue shebeen swallowed father's whole, and Thabo stood at the window every night, counting hours, doing terrible math, calculating survival. Thabo was 11 when his father's hand first hit him. His school shoes were in the living room, just shoes, a small mistake. But Baba came home drunk, and small things became big things when alcohol twisted his brain. "How many times must I tell you?" His words slurred together. "You think rules don't apply to you?" Thabo opened his mouth to apologize. The slap came fast. His head snapped sideways, the world tilted, his cheek exploded in fire. Blood filled his mouth where his teeth cut his lip. "Naledi!" screamed Mama. She rushed in. "Please, he's just a child." Baba pushed her aside. Thabo's cheek burned. Tears pressed behind his eyes, but he wouldn't let them fall. Weakness was crying. He needed to be strong. That night, touching his swollen face in the dark, Thabo made a new decision. He would be perfect. Never leave shoes out again, never give Baba a reason to hit him. If he could just be good enough, quiet enough, invisible enough, maybe the violence would stop. He didn't know yet that his father's rage had nothing to do with shoes. It had everything to do with a lost job, a lost future, pain that alcohol couldn't numb. But Thabo was 11, and he still believed being good could save them all. By 12, Thabo had perfected the art of silence. He stopped bringing friends home, stopped talking about his life, stopped being the bright, talkative boy his teachers remembered. At school, when Mrs. Kumalo called on him, he'd answer correctly, but quietly. No more raising his hand eagerly, no more sharing ideas. The other children noticed. Birthday party invitations stopped. Friendships faded. Sipho tried to stay close. Every Saturday he'd show up with a soccer ball. "Come play." "I have chores." "Come after." "I have homework." "Come again." "I can't." One Saturday, Sipho stopped coming. Thabo felt relief and loneliness crash over him equally. School became both refuge and reminder. In class he could pretend to be normal, but then the bell would ring at 3 o'clock and his stomach would tighten. Time to go home. He started walking slowly, taking the long route, stopping at the park to watch other children play games he barely remembered. He'd stay until the sky turned orange, then purple, then dark blue, until he couldn't delay any more. Naledi grew quiet too, 8 years old, but she seemed younger. She stopped asking questions, stopped singing, stopped being a child. At night she'd curl against Thabo, flinching at every sound. "It's okay," he'd whisper. Another lie. Nothing was okay. Their childhood was being stolen one night at a time, and silence was the price they paid for survival. Thabo was 13 when something inside him cracked. Tuesday afternoon, he came home from school and found Mama on the kitchen floor, not sitting, collapsed, blood dripping from her lip onto her yellow dress, a broken chair beside her. From the bedroom, Naledi crying. She'd locked herself in. Baba stood over Mama, swaying, his fists still clenched. Something in Thabo's chest, something that had been bending for 3 years, finally snapped. "Leave her alone!" Thabo's father turned, slow, dangerous. "What did you say?" Thabo's hands formed fists. He was taller now, not a small child anymore. "I said leave her alone. Haven't you done enough?" "You think you're a man?" Baba's laugh was ugly. "You think you can talk to me like this? You stopped being a father the day you started hitting us." The beating was worse than any before. Baba's fists found his ribs, his stomach, his face. His eyes swelled shut, his nose gushed blood. Mama screamed, tried to pull him off, but rage made him strong. When it was over, Thabo lay on the floor tasting blood and something else, anger, hot and dark and powerful. All these years he'd been afraid, but fear was just one side of a coin. Flip it over, and you find rage. Mama helped him to bed, her tears falling on his bruised face. Why did you challenge him? You know better. And there it was, the terrible truth. His mother had accepted this life, expected him to accept it too, expected him to be quiet and survive by shrinking himself smaller and smaller. I won't be quiet any more, Thabo said. But even as he said it, he felt the anger taking root, growing into something that scared him almost as much as his father did. That night, staring at the ceiling with one eye swollen shut, Thabo made a new decision. If the world was violent, he would be violent back. If the world was cruel, he would be cruel first. He was done being broken. The cycle his father started was tightening around him, and Thabo didn't realize he was already caught. At 15, Thabo found new friends. The boys who hung around the corner store noticed him, noticed the anger in his shoulders, the hardness in his eyes. They recognized him as one of their own. Jabu was their leader, 19 with a scar on his face and pockets full of money. "Your old man still hitting you?" Jabu asked, offering Thabo a cigarette. Thabo took it, coughed on the first drag. The others laughed, but not meanly. "My father was the same," Jabu said, "until I got big enough to hit back." They offered Thabo something his home never could: power, control, belonging. Small jobs at first: keep watch, deliver packages, hold money. The cash they gave him felt like freedom. He bought food for Naledi, a dress for Mama, new shoes for himself. "Where did you get this money?" Mama asked. "Piece jobs, helping at the market." The lie came easy. School became pointless. Why study when he could make more money in an afternoon than his teachers made in a week? Mrs. Kumalo called his name during roll call. He showed up less and less. The first time he really drank, everything softened. The sharp edges of his anger dulled. The memories faded. The constant fear quieted. He understood suddenly why his father drank. It felt like freedom, even though it was a cage. He was becoming his father, and part of him didn't care. Chapter 9. The Same Hens. At 16, Thabo hit his girlfriend. Her name was Tandiwe, sweet girl studying to be a nurse. She'd seen something worth saving in him. They were arguing about where he'd been, about the money, about Jabu and the crew. "You're throwing your life away," she said, her voice rising. "Can't you see? You're becoming—" His hand moved before his mind could stop it. The slap wasn't hard, but it was enough. Her hand flew to her cheek. Shock flooded her face. In that moment, Thabo saw himself clearly. His father's hands, his father's rage, his father's disease being passed down like a curse. "Tandy, you're just like him," she said, tears streaming. "I thought you were different, but you're just like your father." She left. Thabo punched the wall until his knuckles bled. Then he drank his father's brandy straight from the bottle, welcoming the burn, the numbness, the escape. Baba found him passed out on the kitchen floor hours later. For once, there was no beating, just recognition in his father's bloodshot eyes, like looking in a mirror across time. The next day, Thabo dropped out of school. "Education is a lie," he told himself. Mama cried, but her tears couldn't reach him anymore. He was numb, armored in the same indifference his father wore. Naledi, 12 now, watched him with eyes that held no illusions. Her brother, her protector, had become another version of their nightmare. She stopped talking to him. But Thabo told himself he didn't care. Late at night, though, when the alcohol wore off and the house was quiet, he'd stare at the ceiling and wonder if you could drown on dry land. Wonder if that's what he was doing, drowning in the same water that swallowed his father. The police then takes Thabo to the station. We're back now, back to where we started. From 10-year-old boy counting footsteps to 17-year-old thief in handcuffs. 7 years. They process him. Fingerprints, photo, a cell that smells like piss and defeat. When they let him use the phone, his hands shake. Mama! Oh, Thabo! Oh, my son! Not anger, just grief, which is worse. They keep him overnight. In the fluorescent lit cell, Thabo stares at his reflection in a scratched mirror. 17, but his eyes look ancient. He sees his father's face in his own. Morning brings a social worker, Miss Dlamini, thin, tired, professional. You have a choice, she says, slides capers across the table. Youth program, counseling, school, or trial, jail, and we both know where that leads. She pauses. Your father's choices don't have to be your choices, Thabo, but you're running out of time to choose differently. A pen sits on the table. Thabo thinks of Naledi, who doesn't look at him anymore. Thinks of Mama's grief. Thinks of Tandiwe's face when he hit her. You're just like him. Thinks of the boy he was at 10, protecting his sister, promising himself he'd never become the monster. 7 years from that promise to this cell. Somewhere in Orlando East, his father is waking up, surrounded by bottles, about to start the same cycle again. The shebeen, the drinking, the violence. The cycle tightening like a noose. But here, in this moment, Thabo realizes something. He's standing where his father stood years ago, the moment before everything breaks, when you can still choose differently. Will he choose differently, or will the cycle continue? Thabo's hand hovers over the pen. Outside, Johannesburg wakes. Inside, a 17-year-old boy stops running. His fingers close around the pen. For the first time in 7 years, Thabo makes a choice that isn't about fear or survival or becoming his father. He makes a choice about becoming himself. The pen touches paper, and the sound of breaking glass, the sound that haunted him since he was 10, the sound of his childhood shattering, the sound of violence passing from one generation to the next, that sound, finally, begins to fade.